Self-publishing a book is arguably the most life-changing decision that I've ever made. It not only in terms of giving me a purpose in life and helping millions of people, right, with my message and my work, but also earning a great income for my family to provide financial security for us. One of the biggest things was when I was diagnosed with cancer 7 years ago. I was in the hospital for 8 months and I couldn't work. If it wasn't for a self-published book that was paying my mortgage and putting food on the table while I was fighting for my life, I don't know what would have happened. I'm not taking a one-time lump payment and then never seeing any money again, and my kids never seeing any money again, right? Because a book is the kind of thing that you can hand down to your children, right? And they literally, they're now earning income off the work that their mom or dad did.
Hey, Chandler Bolt here, and joining me today is Mr. Hal Elrod. Hal, if you've never heard of him before, well, then what are you doing? You didn't listen to this podcast. He's our first ever, I think, third-time guest, which is pretty exciting. So you may remember him back from episode 13 or back from episode 48. The first one we talked about is Beyond the Bestseller methodology. The second one we talked about international rights, foreign rights for your book, bunch of stuff like that. So those are two great episodes to go back and watch or listen to. But today we're going to be talking about launching an updated and revised version of your book. That's really going to be a lot of the meat and potatoes. I'll kind of set the stage. Hal, he's the creator of The Miracle Morning, which is one of the most successful self-published books ever. It's sold over 2 million copies. Is that the, I feel like every time I see you, I'm asking for an updated stat. Is it over 2 million?
It's
is that
over 2. I don't know by how many, but yeah.
Probably by a lot. He's also created the Miracle Morning series, which is pretty fun. And actually, if you're listening to this episode and you listened last week, we talked with Cameron Harold about one of the books that are in that series, The Miracle Morning for Entrepreneurs, right? Yes. So just prolific author. The Miracle Morning has had a profound change and impact on my life. It is a huge part of why I've been successful with my business. Hal gave me my start early on, and it was his event was one of the first events I ever spoke at. And also, just like so many fun Easter eggs along the journey. Hal sent us probably more customers than anyone ever. So we've published a lot of people in the Miracle Morning community, and we love working with people in the Miracle Morning community because they get their books done because they use their Miracle Morning to actually write the book. And so it's just such a fun joy to be bringing him back here on the show. So Hal, welcome back.
I'm excited, Chandler. I love you, dude. I love getting time with you anytime. And I'm honored to be back on the podcast.
So pretty exciting, the timing of this. And so obviously the Miracle Morning, there's an updated and revised edition that's on pre-order right now. So if you're listening to this, just go and grab the book if you haven't already. But even if you have and you got the original version, get the new version. We're going to be unpacking a lot of the behind the scenes of this. All right. And so I've got a lot of questions, and I want this to just be really a blueprint for people who, obviously if you're a fan of the Miracle Morning, you're a fan of Hal, this is gonna be fun. But then also if you're thinking about relaunching a book, doing an updated or revised version, like all that stuff, I want this to be just such a powerful episode for you. So I guess I'll start, Hal. How has self-publishing a book changed your life, and how has publishing the original version of The Miracle Morning changed your life?
Yeah. In profound ways. In fact, you're one of the only people who I've ever, brought to my audience and been like, hey, done like an affiliate, like sharing your message and self-publishing with my audience, because I could genuinely say that self-publishing a book is arguably the most life-changing decision that I've ever made. It not only in terms of giving me a purpose in life and helping millions of people, right, with my message and my work, but also earning a great income for my family to provide financial security for us. And one of the biggest things was when I was diagnosed with cancer 7 years ago. I was in the hospital for 8 months and I couldn't work. I was doing 650 hours of chemotherapy. And if it wasn't for a self-published book that was paying my mortgage and putting food on the table while I was fighting for my life, I don't know what would have happened, right? Bankruptcy. It could have been really, really bad. So yeah, to me, the reason reason that you write a book and publish a book, there's two. It's impact and income, right? How do you create a scalable impact to help people? And how do you create a scalable income to support you and your loved ones? And so, yeah, that's the most life-changing part. And I want to say something that when you were talking about this episode and about relaunching a book, because I would imagine a lot of people listening, they're like, oh, I'm not even done with my first book, or I just published my first book, so I'm not even thinking about this. I actually want to challenge you, because when I was writing The Miracle Morning, the biggest book, I don't know, it was number one, but it was one of the biggest books, was The 4-Hour Workweek. And I bought The 4-Hour Workweek. I read it on a camping trip. I absolutely devoured and loved and reread that book. Well, I think about a year or two after that book came out, Tim Ferris wrote The 4-Hour Workweek Updated and Expanded Edition. And I bought it before I even read the description. I was like, dude, I love The 4-Hour Workweek. This is updated and expanded. I could only imagine, right? Like, I was a super fan, so I bought it. And I remember thinking, dude, one day, I know I'm still writing The Miracle Morning, but like one day I want to do what Tim did. After the book comes out, I want to do an updated and expanded edition. Now, he only took 2 years to do it. I took 11 years to do it. But the new book, I rewrote every page. I added 70 pages of new content. So it was a 150-page book. Now it's a 200, almost 30-page book, right? Including 2 new chapters, The Miracle Evening and The Miracle Life. And I will say this, if you go back and read your book that you wrote 10 years ago, if you're not a little embarrassed by who you were back then, right? That means you haven't been doing your Miracle Morning and growing as a person, right? Because when I'd go back and read the original Miracle Morning, it was like embarrassing. I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I wrote this, and I'm glad people like it, but I'm kind of embarrassed by it, right? So it was really cool to have this new opportunity to go through line by line and be like, oh, that sentence sounds cheesy. Oh, that's super, right? And then, completely update and expand it. So back to you.
Yeah, that's great, Hal. And so you've already kind of spoken to some of this. I mean, we talk about the relaunch, right? And some people have a wildly successful book launch, and a relaunch is just, hey, I want to add fuel to the fire. And some people, their launch, in fact, probably more like most people, their launch doesn't go how they want it to. And for people who, go back to the first episode and the first 2 episodes with Hal, we'll talk about, he tells the story about how his launch wasn't all that successful, but he just kept marketing the book. And that's the beyond the bestseller methodology and all that stuff. And how do you keep, that we call it the 1-year launch. How do you keep marketing the book? Hal got on hundreds of podcasts, kept marketing the book. And then it was a multi-year overnight success. And so we don't have time to go into all that stuff today. But go back to those episodes and listen to them or watch them. And so I want to talk. So I'm prefacing this question with like 15 different things, but we always talk about the relaunch, right? Yeah. And I talk about how there's 5 types of relaunches. There's anniversary editions. There's just because. There's additional formats. There's all kinds of stuff. The biggest of which is the updated and expanded. It's like it's the most work, but can have the biggest payoff if you decide to do it that way. So obviously you decided to do it that way. You mentioned the Tim Ferris story as an early inspiration. What was the kick in the pants to finally do this, and why did you decide to do the updated and expanded edition?
Yeah, so the kick in the pants was going with a traditional publisher, and I've met with traditional publishers for probably 9 years. I got an agent 9 years ago. I was introduced by Mike Koenigs to his agent, and she's amazing, Celeste Fine. And we met with publishers, and I've gotten probably 15 offers from traditional publishers, but none of them they never made sense financially, right? It would have been like a really nice payday, and then my kids would have been yelling at me for the rest of my life because they're like, Dad, we could have had lifetime royalties. Why did you sell the rights to your books? So my publisher reached out and said, hey, I think I found, or not my publisher, my agent, and said, I think I found the right partner. It's a publisher that'll do, like profit sharing, and they're really creative, and they really take care of their authors. And I have a friend who was a self-published author who had sold 20,000 copies as a self-published author. And in fact, Gino Wickman, and wrote Traction. Gino worked with the same publisher, and I believe he sold, it's hundreds of thousands, if not over 1 million copies since signing with them. So I called Gino. I said, Gino, what's your experience like? What do you think? He's like, they're the best. I love working with them. They're phenomenal. He raved about them. So that was really it. It's like, okay, we finally found a publisher, because here's the point, is that the Miracle Morning being self-published, there are the limitations of Walmart's not going to carry it, and Target's not going to carry it, and Barnes Barnes and Noble, actually, we found a way to get in Barnes and Noble, but very limited exposure. And this was an opportunity where, wow, now we can get it in the retail market to reach an entirely new audience that might not buy books on Amazon. I mean, it's a small percentage, right? But they're when they're at Target and they're in the book section or they're in the checkout lane or whatever. So that was it, is how can we reach more people? And that's the way I look at this, is the Miracle Morning has sold 2 million copies plus, which means there's 8 billion people that I still need to find a way to reach and impact with the book. And so this to me is that next step that I was patient to find the right partner to do it.
That's great. And since launching the original version, for those who don't know, you've done the Miracle Morning movie, which was really cool, and a bunch of super successful authors, or not just authors, but entrepreneurs in that movie,
including Chandler
also
Bolt.
Have done the Miracle Morning. Yeah, including Chandler Bolt for about 5 seconds.
But it was the best, dude. You stole the show with your line, man. That was the best part of the movie.
That's not 5 seconds of fame. But he also has the Miracle Morning app. So I think, when we talked about this in past podcast episodes, and he's coming to speak at Author Advantage Live to talk about this of, hey, you can really create a movement around your book. And how do you do that, and practically, and all that stuff. And so there's ways to do that. But then obviously when it came down to it, saying, how can we reach more people with the actual book itself? So it sounds like, all right, there's a creative model with your publisher in that. I want to dive into that, and then I want to come back to kind of this updated and expanded topic. So you've had publishers offer you tons of money for years. What was it about this specific deal that you said, all right, this actually makes sense, and let's do it, and then do the updated and revised version as part of it?
Yeah. So instead of an advance, right, most publishers give you an advance on royalties, and they usually calculate that you'll never earn that money back, right? Meaning that if they give you a $100,000 advance, right, they're calculating, okay, we don't think this book will ever earn more than $100,000 in royalties. And if it does, great, but they estimate their advance typically based on what they think your book will almost earn out over its lifetime, so that they can keep the majority of those profits, because they're getting typically 88% of the profits, give or take, it varies, and you're getting 12%, right? And so again, it's a nice check, but for the rest of your life. And that's why self-publishing for 99% of authors, by the way, is a better way to go, because you're the publisher, right? You're getting the 88% or 70% or whatever of the royalties from, Kindle Direct Publishing, Amazon, whatever it is. And so this was a profit sharing deal where the publisher, there was not an advance at all. It was sharing profits. I shouldn't say, well, yeah, not at all, but essentially it's that we are going to share in the profits, and I get the bulk of the profits, and then it scales up. The more books that we sell, the higher percentage I get, right? So,
that's great.
Yeah. So it's a profit sharing deal where I felt like, okay, I'm not taking a one-time lump payment and then never seeing any money again, and my kids never seeing any money again, right? Because a book is the kind of thing that you can hand down to your children, right? And they literally, they're now earning income off the work that their mom or dad did, when they were little or decades ago. So that was why for me. So that was part of it. And then the other part of it was that the publisher themselves, my publisher is Ben Bella, and Ben Bella, they're kind of an entrepreneurial publisher where they really take care of their authors, and they don't have the same red tape that the big New York publishers have, but they still have major distribution. So you get kind of the best of like a small indie publisher that's like working hand in hand with their authors, but with a global distribution, to get you into the stores and airports and all that stuff.
Got it. Cool. That's great. That's helpful. So, and just to unpack this for people, how spot on. I mean, if you're traditionally publishing, typically it's somewhere between 8 to 12% royalty rate, but then often you got to earn back your advance. If you don't earn back your advance, maybe you buy back books. Like there's a bunch of stuff kind of hidden in publishing contracts, but then self-published, you might make somewhere between 20 to 70% royalty rate per book, right? So a lot better. So,
I made 70%. Yeah. As a self-published author.
Yeah. And you've sold a lot of books. So people can do a little bit of a back of napkin math on that. It's really good numbers. So it sounds like, okay, you kind of were able to flip the script on that, where you're getting the lion's share of royalties, but now getting expanded distribution. And that's why it was a yes for you.
Yeah, exactly. And that's, the reason I say that for 99% of people, self-publishing, I mean, there's multiple reasons, right? You get more royalties, et cetera. But the thing is, you need leverage if you are going to get a publishing deal that makes sense for you, even if it is in advance. Because maybe all you care about is, hey, if I could get a big enough advance to, pay off my house or whatever, then like, I'm great. I already have a career, a job. I don't need lifetime royalties. Maybe that's your situation. But the only way to get that advance is to get leverage. And I'll tell you, Chandler, when I first was writing The Miracle Morning, I hired a gal to help me write a book proposal to send off to publishers. And while we were writing that proposal, it took us like 6 months, doing lots of market research and this and that. I kept learning more about self-publishing, which was still, it was relatively new. I mean, 2011, and it wasn't nearly as popular. There was no Chandler Bolt, self-publishing school back then. And so, but the more research I did, I went, so wait a minute, if I traditionally publish, if I get a deal, they're going to keep most of my royalties. I'm probably going to get a very small advance because I'm an unknown author with no following and, no big email list. But here's the kicker. They don't actually do very much to market the book. I actually still have to do all of the marketing. And I was like, that doesn't make sense to me. If I'm out there, I'm going to market the book. I should be the one that is able to, earn the income from the book, not give it all to the publisher. So I think that's the biggest misconception people have is like, oh, I get a book deal and I'm golden. Like everything's going to take care of itself. Nope. You still have to get on all the podcasts, do all of the work. And so self-publishing, of course, gives you the benefit of you're doing the work and you're keeping the royalties and you have total control over your content, right? You own your content, not a publisher. Mm-hmm. And if you, and not just owning your content, but let's say you want to update your book. I've done this a handful of times over the years where, I would read, 2 and 3 star reviews and go, oh man, there's multiple people are saying the same thing. That was a blind spot for me. I didn't realize when I wrote the book that they're right. It is this, it is that, right? Or I shouldn't have said that. I was able to then go into my Microsoft Word document, update it, make the changes, republish it through, Amazon's backend. And now I've solved that problem. And now I'm not getting any more, critical reviews about that thing because it's fixed. And I've done that over the years. And then same thing, when I started putting on live events, I was able to put an ad in my book for my live event, right? And then I put an ad in my book to hire me as a keynote speaker and I launched my speaking career. I couldn't have done that, or it would have been next to impossible if I was traditionally published. Then when the Miracle Morning app came out, I was able to put an ad in the book for app, right? So, and even just add it to the text. So having that flexibility, I mean, I don't think there's any new author, unless you are super famous and you have millions of followers and a publisher is going to pay you millions of dollars to write a book, unless that's you, which is that's, 1/1000th of a percentage of people. Self-publishing is the way to go, not only financially, but to own the rights to your content and to be able to change it, improve it as you go along.
That's cool. Yeah, I completely agree with that. So I'm assuming, but I don't know for sure. So that's why I'm asking, you are keeping kind of like the series of The Miracle Morning. You're keeping that self-published, and that's outside of this deal. And
yes, the deal was just
this singular book.
The deal was just for The Miracle Morning, and then the series is separate. And that could change it. And my publisher could go, hey, we want to actually try bringing on the Miracle Morning for Entrepreneurs book and putting some energy behind that, right? I think it'll depend on how well the Miracle Morning does in stores and that kind of thing. But yeah, right now it's two totally separate deals. So there's the Miracle Morning book is the only one that's part of the deal, and then the series is completely separate. So it's still self-published. So I'm a hybrid author. I'm a traditionally published author, and I've still got a dozen, or so self-published books in the Miracle Morning series.
Man with many talents and many books. And then one last, just sorry to get so in the weeds, but I think this might be helpful for people to understand the picture, the publishing picture, if you will. The Miracle Equation, that was the first one that you did traditionally published,
yes.
Right? You had a ton of success with the Miracle Morning and then some of the series. And then that was one where you said, hey, I am going to go the more traditional model. I'm going to take an upfront advance. We're going to make a run at this. And that's traditionally published, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And the way that happened is one of the publishers that we turned down, Penguin Random House, great publisher, but just the deal didn't make sense for the Miracle Morning. And it was really a miracle, man. It was like, I had just come off my chemotherapy treatment. It was 2017, I think. And I was like, I'm like, okay, I'm back. I'm going to get back to work, and so I was setting my goals for the year. And I go, one of my goals is I'm like, I want to traditionally publish a book. I want to just try it. I want to see how I like it. I want to give it a shot. And like a week later, my agent reaches out and she's like, Hal, I don't know if you're ever open to traditionally publishing a book, but Penguin Random House really wants to do a book with you since they're not doing Miracle Morning. And do you have anything in mind? I'm like, oh my God, this is a miracle. I was like praying about this last week. Like I have this concept called the miracle equation. It's how I've achieved every goal I've ever set. I would love to do a book about it. And and then the rest is history in terms of we decided to traditionally publish that book.
Kind of back to the Miracle Morning updated and expanded edition. What was the impetus to like do a fully updated and expanded edition? Was that like, did Ben Bella require that? I know it sounds dumb, but like you obviously could really just republish the book, but with a publisher. So what was the thought process there?
Yeah, very important question. And I will tell you, I ordered other books that had been revised editions or anniversary editions to see. I shouldn't say I ordered them. I got all the free Kindle previews because I wanted to read like their intros. And like Brene Brown, I forgot which one of her books it was, but one of her most popular books, in the intro, she's like, hey, this is the 10-year anniversary edition or 20-year anniversary. She said, I asked my audience what they wanted to see different, and they said nothing. It's perfect. So I changed nothing. I'm like, well, then why would your audience buy it, right? So that was my biggest thing is I'm like, I want to create this book so that it exceeds the expectations of my current audience and readers, right? And it just makes sense. The book's been out for 11 years. So it's like, if you've read the original Miracle Morning and there's a new edition coming out, but you find out, oh, it's literally the exact same, A, you're not going to buy it. B, to me, I'm not serving that most loyal segment of my audience, right? It's like, if I'm going to come out with a new Miracle Morning, it should have everything I've learned in the last 15 years. When I wrote the original Miracle Morning, I was actually new to the Miracle Morning. I was new to meditation and affirmations and visualization and exercise and reading. Well, now I've been doing those things for 15 years. So what I've learned, not only myself from my own evolution, but also from just interacting with, hundreds of thousands of Miracle Morning practitioners. So the new book, there's 70 pages of new content. 25 pages alone is in the S.A.V.E.R.S section. And in case I'll go over this in 60 seconds, if you don't know what the Miracle Morning is and the S.A.V.E.R.S, the Miracle Morning, the engine that drives it is this acronym called S.A.V.E.R.S, S-A-V-E-R-S. It's silence, affirmations, visualization, exercise, reading, and scribing, which is a fancy word for writing or journaling. And it's those 6 practices that you do every morning, anywhere from 6 minutes to 60 minutes. So just that section alone has 25 new pages where I'm teaching new meditation techniques and new visualization techniques and doing a deep dive into helping people write their own affirmations, holding their hand. And again, it's me listening to the questions that the Miracle Morning community has been asking for the last decade, going, cool. I read your book, but I'm still unsure of this part. I'm still stuck here. I'm still struggling here. So I wanted to answer all of that for new readers and existing readers.
That's great. I hope you're loving this episode so far. So if you're serious about writing and publishing your book, we would love to chat with you and help create a custom plan. All right. So all you need to do right now is go to selfpublishing.com/schedule. Schedule a 45-minute consultation with one of the experts on my team. All right. Let's implement what you're learning in this episode and let's see how we can help with your book. Go to selfpublishing.com/schedule. I want to ask you more about the writing process. And so my biggest takeaway so far from what you've shared is listen to your audience and the feedback on the first version and use that to inform the additions, the edits, the improvements to the second version. And what I also heard is that you were even doing that before this edition, right? Because you self-publish, you could say, oh, I got a review on this. Let me fix that or improve that and that sort of thing. So I think those are 2 good lessons. If we just zoom out a little bit, what did the actual process look like of writing writing the updated and expanded edition? Like,
Yeah.
was it harder or easier than the first version? Because I feel like sometimes it's harder when you have a chunk of words that you start from and you're editing versus writing from scratch. So can you walk us through the process? Was it harder or easier? All that good stuff.
Yeah. So what I did, I actually had over the years, because I've actually been technically kind of working on this throughout the years. Like I've had an updated draft that I just will play with, and I've had multiple editors. So I sent it to this guy, the woman, Emily Klein, that helped me write the Miracle Equation. I love how she writes, and so I sent her the manuscript. I'm like, hey, will you go through this? And I paid her, money to edit, and I just said, this was like 2 years ago, and I said, I want you to just go through and just rewrite anything that you think could be better, or make any note, like just any notes, any rewrites, just anything that you think that if you were making this book better, I want your eyes on it, right? So she did it. And then I think I had another editor do that too. I can't remember when I did that, but I think I had a second editor do that. Just get another perspective. What do you think? And then on this, when I got down to it, my editor through my publisher, we really went back and forth. So I would go through the Word doc and I would just rewrite it. I'd be like, this part sounds stupid. This is cheesy. This is insensitive. This is whatever. And I just rewrote it the way I would say it now, having hopefully evolved over the last decade or so. And then here's what was interesting. My editor was amazing. The fact that he took this much time to do this. I would send it back to him, and he had on his screen, here's a little tip for anybody that whether it's instruction for an editor or you do it yourself, on his screen, he would bring up the original edition and my new edition, and he would go page by page and see what I changed. And then he would come back and he'd go, Hal, love this. It was better in the original. Love this. It was better in the original. So to have him like that thoughtfully going through it and being like, and there were some parts where I'm like, oh, dude, it's better now. So, we had a little contention. But so that was it. And it was really challenging, man. The rewrite was not easy. And I don't know if it was harder, but it was up there. And then what I did, I added 2 brand new chapters. And this was fun because the rewrite it's frustrating and you don't get to have that blank page to just create from, right? So it is a different process. It's almost more of an editing versus a writing, right? So I added 2 brand new chapters. This was part of the idea of how do I make this new book fresh, not just rewriting the original content and adding to it, but what I need to put brand new, fresh content. So there are 2 brand new chapters at the end of the book. Chapter 11, The Miracle Evening, which is your strategy for blissful bedtime and better sleep. It's a 22-page chapter, I think. It's a behemoth of a chapter, right? It's like a mini book. And then the last chapter, chapter 12, is The Miracle Life, which is your path to inner freedom. And that's actually the next book I want to write that I've been working on for probably 3 years, ever since the pandemic started, which is like, how do you choose to be the happiest and the most grateful you've ever been in the midst of difficult circumstances, right? How do you choose how you feel as opposed to letting outside forces dictate how you feel? And so to me, that's some of my most important content I'll ever share with the world. And so I thought, man, I don't want to wait a year or two for people to hear that and read that. So I got to put a 24-page chapter in the new edition of the Miracle Morning, all about that content. So there's not only is the original Miracle Morning beefed up and updated and expanded, there's actually 40 pages of brand new concepts that were never even in the original book.
Yeah, that's great. You spoke to this a little bit, but I'll ask it anyway, just in case you have anything else you want to add. I think one of the hardest parts of doing an updated and expanded edition is making sure you don't screw up the book.
Yeah,
I've read multiple books. I won't name them, but where I read the update, I love the original version and I read the newest one. I'm like, this is 5 hours longer and way worse. Like I wish I would have just had the original. And so I'll even recommend sometimes with that book, I'm like, hey, recommend it to my team or somebody, but make sure you get the original version. And so how did you make sure that you didn't do that with this book?
Yeah, dude. So I'm glad you brought that up because I forgot about that. That was one of my biggest fears, is like the original book has done so well. I know I could be better, but what if I do too much? What if I change too much? much, right? And so there's a couple things. One is, I think that was I expressed that fear to my editor, and that was the reason I believe that he took it upon himself to go, all right, I'm going to put up both next to each other, and I'm going to, so he kept a lot of the original. Like, I completely changed my accident story in the new one, and I'm like, I'm going to tell them parts that they don't know about this. And like, I beefed it up, and he was like, dude, it was exactly what you said. He's like, it's really bloated, man. They don't need to know about you and your girlfriend having this conversation while you're putting your tie on. Like, they don't care. But it's an entertaining story. They're like, yeah, but you don't need it. So that was part of it. And then I'll tell you, so that was while we were going through it. But then as soon as I had the final was due from me. All right, it's due, Hal, it's got to be, I got to have it today. It's due to me today. When I sent the final new edition off that night, I'm laying in bed and I'm tossing and turning, and I just have this flash of panic, and I go, oh my God, I made the new book too long. Like that, what if that was a huge part of the essence of the original, is you could read it so fast that you could actually implement it. But if it's too long, they're not going to get to the end, and then they can't implement it. And then now they're not going to recommend it to their friends because they didn't finish it, and they're not doing. I'm like, ah. So like, I sent an email to my editor. I'm like, I'm freaking out. I think it's too long. What do we do? You know? And he emailed back, and he's like, Hal, I mean, I've read the whole thing. I think it's great. Let me look at it through that lens, right? I'm a new reader. I don't, you know. And he came back, and we were up to 85,000 words, I think.
Wow.
And I could be wrong. It was 75,000 or 65, whatever it was. It was a lot of words. Here's the point. He came back and he's like, Hal, after reading it, I think we should cut 10 to 15,000 words. You're right. That was the hardest part of the entire process, probably, is going, what do I cut? And so here's what we did. Thank God for my editor. He goes, Hal, you're too close to it. Let me go through and cut what I think we can cut. You come back, you read it without reading my cuts. And then as you're going through it, if you notice anything where you're like, wait, this feels off, or it feels like it's missing something, or he goes, then you go look at the edition, the doc with the cuts. And if you, so that's how we did it. So we cut 10 to 15,000 words after I thought we were done. And that took like another, 3 weeks, I think. And then, yeah. And so we ended up with a finished product. And I mean, I feel pretty dang good about like, after how meticulous we were through all of those different iterations. It's like, if it's not the best book it could be by now, I don't know what else we could do. And the last thing I'll say is this: think of it this way: the majority of the new words are the 40 pages at the end of the book. So recognizing that, we added a page in like a little page in between the end of what was the Miracle Morning and these two new chapters. And it like says something like, take a deep breath. You've now completed the Miracle Morning. Like, you're ready to start your Miracle Morning tomorrow. Read these next two chapters during the reading portion of your Miracle Morning.
Oh, cool. Yeah. Love that. Right? Integration.
So it's like, it kind of handled that, where it's like, no, dude, you're done before those 40 pages even start. Like, you're ready for your Miracle Morning, and now you've got your first reading material so yeah, I think that we struck a really nice balance between all of the concerns and, and everything else.
That's great. I like that a lot. Well, I got a couple more questions. I want to talk about the launch of PreOrder. First, I want to be mindful of time. I know we're coming up on.
I got to the top of the hour.
Okay, great.
Or like 5 till. Yeah.
Okay. So I want to talk marketing and pre-launch. So right before the interview, we were kind of talking about this. So I'll just do some cliff notes and maybe save us some time here, and also give the context for people. So you said that you took down the original version. The current version, or the newest version, is at the time of recording this in pre-order. You were able to get the reviews to transfer through Amazon, which is a huge win. And you said would probably be a deal breaker.
There's 32,000 reviews. So to lose those would potentially be a deal breaker. I mean,
Yeah, exactly. Either a deal breaker, or you'd have to keep the old listing and keep selling the old version of the book, and then also have the new version. Then you got 2 versions live and that sort of thing, which might have been a deal breaker for your publisher and the deal that they struck with you. So that's, we're kind of laying the framework for that's what's happening logistically, the relaunch and updating and revise and all that stuff. You said the only place that it didn't transfer reviews was on Audible. Which sucks.
Yeah.
So you have to restart from scratch there, but that I'm sure you'll be able to do that, and that'll be the new version. So I guess first off, let's just start with this with the website that people can go to so that people can learn from how you're doing it. So what's the site where people can go to pre-order the book and see how you're doing the pre-order bonuses and all that stuff?
Yeah, we're doing a really extensive pre-order bonus campaign. And so if you go to thenewmiraclemorning.com, that will take you to the pre-order page. So not Amazon, but to my page. So thenewmiraclemorning.com. And for anybody that orders one copy of the book, they get, we set the value, and I always underprice. I don't like, like authors or internet marketers that are like, this is a combined value of blah, blah, blah. You're like, come on, dude, you're just making that up.
$7 billion.
So I always go under, I'm like, my team's like, Hal, dude, your time's worth more than that. The fact that you're doing that, anyway. But so if you buy one copy of the book, you get 3 bonuses. First, you get a 40-page sneak peek of the new edition. And by the way, for anybody listening, and for you, Chandler, if you don't, do you know about flippingbook.com? It's awesome. So it's for a launch team. No one can download it. You can set the settings so no one can share the PDF, right? I've had that happen with Miracle Morning where the PDF got leaked online, but it's a 3D interactive where you flip the pages. It's a 3D book. You hear the sound going whoosh, whoosh. It's really nice. So it's a 40-page sneak peek of the book, really well done, including the 2 new chapters. There's sneak peeks of the Miracle Evening, the Miracle Life. Then you get a 60-minute master class that I recorded just for the bonuses. And it's new information based on the new book. So again, the idea, I call it the immediate implementation kit. Because if you're pre-ordering, you're like, I want instant gratification. Great. Read the first 40 pages, read the 2 new chapters, get a 60-minute master class, and you'll get 2 guided meditation tracks based on the Miracle Evening and the Miracle Life. 2 tracks in the Miracle Morning app, totally free, that are only available for the bonuses. And then if you order 5 copies, you get 5 tickets to the Miracle Year live virtual event that I'm hosting on December 14th. So the beauty of it is you're gifting 5 copies of the book to your friends and family and employees and colleagues, but you're also gifting them a $247 live online event that will set them up to have their best year ever in 2024. And that scales for no matter how many tickets somebody buys or how many books. So I have companies that have bought 500 books, 850 books, and they're getting 850 tickets for their employees to attend this live event for free. This other gal bought 500 copies of the book. She's gifting it to her 500 best clients and being like, not only do you get the sneak peek and the masterclass and the book, you get to come to this live event for your best year ever. And then beyond that, there's some other, bonuses with my keynote for really high amounts. But if you go to thenewmiraclemorning.com, and what it'll do is it'll lead you, okay, go buy your book on Amazon, copy and paste your order number and come back to the site and then enter it. And then that puts you into the sequence to get all your bonuses.
Cool. Love that. Thanks for breaking down the pre-order bonus campaign, bundles, all that stuff. Guys, we're buying a few hundred copies ourselves, so you should too. And maybe it's not a few hundred copies, but at least one. So thenewmiraclemorningbook.com. Before we close out here, Hal, what are the top 2 or 3 things that you're focused on as part of the pre-launch? I know we were talking before and you got a lot going on and there's a bunch of stuff that you're doing, but what do you see as like maybe the top 2 or 3 needle movers that will actually sell books?
So for me, what's always sold the most books is doing podcast interviews, so I've been lining up a lot of podcast interviews. And I've been doing them for the last, couple of months. And then I asked them, when I asked to be on their podcast, if they can time the release to be during the launch week, right? So this one will be a little early because there's been a couple where I thought the pre-order made sense to really promote, but for most, because a lot of your audience, they're already Miracle Morning practitioners, they're readers, they're going to want the bonuses, because even just to model, right? If you pre-order the book and you get your order number in, now you can watch how I do it, you can model the email sequences and all of that. So I thought it made sense for pre-orders, but for the average podcast where their audience doesn't know Miracle Morning, they're like, I'm not buying, like, I just want to go get the book, So we're launching all of those during the launch week. But for anyone that doesn't know, when you do pre-order campaign on Amazon.com, all of those pre-orders build up and build up and build up, and then they all go through during your launch week. So I think right now we have like around 3,000 pre-orders on Amazon. So that means that the day the book publishes, right, there's 3,000 sales on Amazon, which of course will drive your ranking, way up.
Got it. That's awesome.
And by the way, Chandler, I did just check. I believe it's not thenewmiraclemorningbook.com. It's thenewmiraclemorning.com. So I just want to clarify.
Got it. My bad.
Yeah.
My bad.
Yeah. No, it's okay.
You said thenewmiraclemorning.com.
Thenewmiraclemorning.com. And by the way, for anybody listening, we were trying to figure out what domain name to use. And I've always used miraclemorningbook.com on podcasts, and that redirects to Amazon. And my team was like, let's just redirect that to the page. I'm like, but it doesn't feel right. And so think about URLs that you buy. Oh, this is the URL tells you this is the new miraclemorning.com. So if you, even if you are a Miracle Morning practitioner, you don't even know what's going on. You're like, wait, what's the new, I gotta see what the new Miracle Morning is. I don't even know what that is. Right. So keeping that in mind when you buy a domain.
Cool. The new miraclemorning.com. Last question for you, Hal. And so we've got a fun new segment. We're taking questions from listeners.
Nice.
So we've got a question from Tyler. It says, how you've inspired millions of people around the world with your book, The Miracle Morning. As an aspiring author myself, I'd love to know, what advice would you give to others wanting to write a book that makes a real impact on people's lives? And were there any key learnings from your writing and publishing process that helped The Miracle Morning resonate with so many readers?
Yeah, this is Tyler that asked this.
Yes.
I'm so glad he asked this. And Chandler, if you don't know the answer that I'm going to say, you've heard it before, because this is what I teach when I talk about Beyond the Bestseller, like how to write a book that creates a movement, earns you a fortune, and changes the world. That's the Beyond the Bestseller methodology. And here's the key is your book needs to change people's behavior in a meaningful way. Many books, if not most books, change people's thinking. It's a bunch of ideas. And when you read it, your mind is blown. You're like, wow, that's a brilliant idea. Oh my gosh. And you're probably so excited about these ideas that you're telling people, you got to read this book. It's amazing. And, I've never thought about my marriage this way or my finances this way, right? But if that book doesn't give you specific instructions and guidance and maybe even accountability on changing your behavior in a meaningful way, then as soon as you're done reading that book, you're on to the next book that changes your thinking. And you're not talking about that first book anymore, because now you're talking about the new book that gives you cool idea after cool idea, new paradigm shift. And then when you're done reading that book, you're not talking about it anymore either. You're talking about the next book you're reading. But if that first book you read changed your daily behavior, now it doesn't have to be daily, but ideally daily, the more frequent, the better. If it changes your behavior in a meaningful way, now you're talking about that book indefinitely, as long as you're doing the thing that it taught you. And so I'll tell you an example is I have a lot of people tell me, and I'm one of them, that, I leave dinner parties early. I leave everything early because I value the Miracle Morning so much. And there's so many people in the Miracle Morning community that have said, people always ask me like, dude, it's only 8:00. Why are you leaving? And they're like, I got to go get in bed for my Miracle Morning tomorrow. They're like, what's the Miracle Morning? And they're like, oh, it's this book I read last year and I do this daily ritual, right? Think about how simple but profound that is. And you can apply that to any area of life. If you're writing a marriage book, get the couple to do a daily ritual, right? Like, for example, a daily devotional, right? Like a Bible where they break down the verses over 365 days, right? Well, if that's something that the couple's reading together every single day, and it's adding value to their life, they're going to tell their friends and family about it, and it's going to, sell more books.
That's great. I love that. Well, guys, if you want to submit a question for a future podcast guest, just leave a comment on our YouTube channel with your question or in a review on the podcast. I've learned so much from Hal over the years. It's been honestly just kind of crazy. Just how inspiring this guy is, how he's given me a chance when nobody gave me a chance. He's supported us when nobody supported us. He's sent us a ton of customers. He's been a great friend, a great mentor, someone that I learned from, that I'm inspired from. And so it's just so fun having him back on the podcast. Hal, to close things out, I know we've already mentioned the link, but where's the best place for people to go to pre-order the book, grab a copy of the book, find out more about you, what you're up to, all that good stuff?
Yeah, thenewmiraclemorning.com is the pre-order page, but I would encourage you to go to miraclemorning.com at some point. You can watch the Miracle Morning movie for free, where superstar Chandler Bolt makes a 5-second appearance, steals the show. You can get the Miracle Morning app, which has over 2,000 5-star reviews now in the App Store. I mean, people are loving the Miracle Morning app. You can join the Miracle Morning community, which is 350,000 people in a Facebook group that wake up and support each other every day. And all the books in the series, everything is at miraclemorning.com. That's the great hub. And in fact, if you go to miraclemorning.com and you scroll down, you can see the new book, and you can redirect even from there to thenewmiraclemorning.com. So, and Chandler, by the way, you say you've learned so much from me over the years, dude. In so many ways, the student has become the teacher, man, because you inspire me every day. The way you impact so many lives and what you've done in business and everything, man, you're an inspiration to me, man. So it's definitely mutual.
I appreciate that. Well, guys, check out the book, grab a new copy of the book. And I mean, I didn't even know that the app had over 2,000 reviews on the App Store. That's pretty cool too. So check it out. Hal, love you, brother. Thanks for coming back.
Love you too, man. Thanks, Chandler.
Thank you so much for watching or listening to this episode of the Self-Publishing School podcast. I know there's so many places that you could be spending your time. There's other podcasts that you could be listening to, YouTube channels that you could be watching. So thank you so much. It means the world. Now, I want you to do 3 things right now if you found this episode helpful. I don't know if you know this, but we've got a YouTube channel. It's a companion channel to this podcast. All the video versions of the episode are on the YouTube channel. So number 1, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Number 2, if you're listening to this podcast wherever, whether this is Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Number 2, I want you to subscribe to this podcast right now so you don't miss a future episode. And then number 3, this is probably the most important, leave a review on the podcast. All right, reviews are super important and help this podcast get discovered by other people. So number 3, leave a review on the podcast. Thank you so much. I'll see you in the next episode.